Let me make one thing clear. You are mine now. This marriage isn't a game. If you betray me, you won't like how I handle disobedience. A big thank you for joining me on this journey. Your support truly means everything. After watching, please hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Selena Williams had always believed that choices defined a person. But as she sat in her father's dimly lit study, staring at the marriage contract that would decide her future, she realized some choices were never hers to make. Her father, Josh Williams, a once respected businessman, sat across from her, his hands trembling as he lit a cigar. The smoke curled in the air like ghosts of the past mistakes he could never undo. "Selena," he began, his voice heavy with regret, "I never wanted this for you." Her throat tightened. "Then don't do it." "I don't have a choice," he whispered. "They'll kill me." "They?" She already knew the answer, but even spoke. "The Kanga family." The name sent a shiver down her spine. The Kanga crime syndicate was feared throughout the city. Ruthless, untouchable, and their leader, Kanga, the Reaper, was the devil himself. Selena clenched her fists. "So I'm just a payment? A pawn in your game of debts?" The door creaked open before her father could answer. Heavy footsteps echoed in the silence, each step carrying the weight of something irreversible. And then she saw him. Kanga stood tall, his tailored black suit fitting him like armor. Sharp jaw, piercing gray eyes, and an air of quiet dominance that made the room feel too small. "Selena Williams," he murmured, his voice smooth yet edged with danger. "You're mine now." The wedding of chains. Selena's wedding was nothing short of a spectacularly lavish affair fit for a queen, yet she felt like a prisoner walking to her execution. Kanga barely looked at her as they exchanged vows, his expression unreadable. When he slid the ring onto her finger, his touch was cold, calculated. As they left the church, paparazzi snapped photos, their marriage making headlines. Mafia king weds business tycoon's daughter. But behind closed doors, there was no fairy tale. "You will obey me," Kanga said that night, his eyes dark with warning. "This is not a love story." Selena lifted her chin. "Then make sure you regret choosing me." A smirk ghosted his lips. "Oh, little wife, you have no idea what you've signed up for." Secrets behind closed doors. That night, Selena lay in the huge bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. Kanga had barely spoken to her since they arrived. He had disappeared into his office, leaving her alone in a house full of secrets. She wasn't naive. This wasn't just a marriage, it was about power. Her father had lost everything in a bad deal. Kanga didn't just take her as payment, wanted control. Over her father's business. Over her life. Over her freedom. But she wasn't going to break. Slipping out of bed, she crept down the dimly lit hallway. If she was going to survive, she needed to learn the truth. A faint glow came from under one of the doors, Kanga's office. Her heart pounded as she pressed her ear to the wood. "I don't trust her," a deep voice said. "Not Kanga, someone else." "She doesn't need to be trusted," Kanga answered coldly. "She just needs to obey." Selena's breath hitched. Then footsteps, coming straight toward the door. She barely had time to turn before the door swung open and she found herself face to face with Kanga. His gray eyes darkened. "Spying on me, wife?" Her throat went dry. Before she could lie, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her inside, shutting the door behind them. She had just made her first mistake. And now, she was at his mercy. Kanga's grip wasn't painful, but it was strong, like a predator holding onto its prey. "Tell me, Selena." He leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek. "What exactly were you hoping to hear?" She swallowed hard, hiding her fear behind a calm face. Maybe the truth. His lips curled into a smirk, but his eyes stayed unreadable. "The truth is dangerous in my world, wife." His world. A world of crime, power, and blood. She lifted her chin. "Then maybe you should be afraid of what I might learn." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, to her surprise, he chuckled. "You're bold. I'll give you that." But then his voice turned cold. Let me make one thing clear. You are mine now. This marriage isn't a game. If you betray me, you won't like how I handle disobedience. Her heart pounded, but she held his gaze. And if I run? Kanga tilted his head. Then I'll find you, bring you back, and remind you exactly who you belong to. She should have been terrified. But instead, a dangerous thrill ran through her veins. She wasn't going to be weak. She wasn't going to be a puppet. If Kanga thought she would be an obedient wife, he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Selena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the shadows stretching across the ceiling, her mind racing. She had tested Kanga and he had let her live. That meant one of two things. Either he didn't see her as a threat, or he had something worse planned for her. Neither made her feel safe. By morning, the mansion was eerily quiet. She expected Kanga to come to her room to remind her of the warning he gave her last night. But he didn't. Instead, a sharp knock on her door startled her. She sat up. Who is it? The door cracked open, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his left cheek. I'm Mateo, he said, his voice rough. Boss wants you downstairs. Selena's stomach twisted, but she refused to let fear show on her face. She wasn't going to let them see her weakness. She followed Mateo down the long, cold hallway. The mansion was beautiful, but it felt more like a prison than a home. Dark wood lined the walls, chandeliers hung overhead, and armed men watched her every move. The dining room looked like something from an expensive painting, high ceilings, a table too long for just two people. But there were only two plates, one for her, one for him. Kanga sat at the head of the table, sipping black coffee. He didn't look up when she entered, but she felt his presence like a storm waiting to break. Selena hesitated before sitting at the other end of the table. The silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Finally, Kanga spoke. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. Do you know what happens to people who betray me, Selena? Her fingers tightened around the fork. I imagine it's not pleasant. A slow smirk touched his lips. It isn't. He set his coffee down and met her eyes for the first time. But you didn't betray me last night, did you? Her heart pounded. He's testing me. She kept her expression unreadable. Not yet. Something dark flickered in his gaze. Then, to her surprise, he chuckled. Good. Keep it that way. And just like that, as if he hadn't just threatened her life, he took a bite of his toast, calm as ever. Selena, on the other hand, had lost her appetite. The day passed in a blur. Guards followed her everywhere. Every room had cameras. The doors were locked. The mansion was nothing more than a golden prison. But Selena wasn't the kind of woman who sat around waiting to be controlled. She needed to escape. That night, she memorized every hallway, every blind spot, every security routine. She watched the guards, counted their steps, timed their movements. She only had one chance. By midnight, the mansion was silent. This was it. She moved quickly, her heartbeat hammering in her ears, down the back staircase, through the side hallway, past the security cameras. Then freedom. The garden stretched before her, leading to the gates. Beyond that was the city. Beyond that was her real life. She ran. Cold night air stung her skin as she reached the gate. She gripped the metal bars, her fingers curling around them. So close. Thin hand clamped around her wrist. A wave of fear shot through her. She turned and found herself face to face with Kanga. His stormy gray eyes locked onto hers. Going somewhere, wife? He murmured, his grip tightening. Selena's pulse pounded. Let me go, she hissed, trying to pull away. Kanga's smirk was slow and dangerous. That's the thing, Selena. He yanked her closer, his breath warm against her skin. I don't let go of what's mine. Kanga pulled Selena back into the mansion, his grip strong but not painful. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't even angry. And that scared her more than anything. Sit, he ordered, pushing her onto the leather couch in his office. She glared at him, refusing to show fear. What now? Are you going to lock me up? Keep me trapped here like a prisoner? He leaned in, his face just inches from hers. You already are. Her heart pounded, but she refused to look away. He watched her for a long moment, his eyes cold and unreadable. Then, slowly, he straightened. No chains, he murmured. Not yet. She swallowed hard. Then what? His smirk was slow and dangerous. You want to fight me? Fine. Let's see how long you last before you realize you can't win. She refused to let his words shake her. But deep down, she knew she had just started a game she might not be able to win. For the next few days, Selena watched Kanga carefully. He was always in control, moving through his world like a king, calm, ruthless, untouchable. But his world wasn't just about power and expensive whiskey. It was built on fear and blood. She learned his schedule. He ran a network so powerful that even the police stayed away. Guns, drugs, information, influence. And then there were the people. Some feared him. Some respected him. Some worshipped him. But everyone obeyed him. One night, from the second-floor balcony, she saw something that made her blood run cold. In the courtyard below, a man was on his knees, hands tied behind his back. Kanga stood over him, speaking in a low, cold voice. Thina gunshot. The man collapsed, just like that. Selena gasped. She stumbled back, her heart racing. She had just watched a man die. Before she could react, a voice came from behind her. You shouldn't be watching, wife. She turned. Kanga stood in the doorway, his eyes locked onto hers. You killed him, she whispered, her voice shaking. He stepped closer, his face unreadable. He was a traitor. Selena felt like she couldn't breathe. And what happens if I betray you? Kanga tilted his head slightly. Do you really want to find out? That night, Selena couldn't sleep. The image of the dead man haunted her. But more than that, Kanga haunted her. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to fear him. But there was something else. Something darker. She had to know the truth. The next morning, when Kanga left for a meeting, she took her chance. She searched his office. If she could find something, maybe she could understand who he really was. Then, in the bottom drawer of his desk, she found a locked file. Her hands trembled as she picked the lock. Inside, she found old photographs. A boy no older than 10, his face bruised, his eyes too sharp for a child. A man he's father? Holding a gun to someone's head? Newspaper clippings. Massacre leaves Williams' family in ruins. Mafia leader, executed only survivor, goes into hiding. Selena's breath caught in her throat. Kanga hadn't just inherited this world. He had been shaped by it. Before she could process it, she felt a shadow fall over her. Her stomach twisted. She turned slowly. Kanga stood in the doorway, watching her. His expression was unreadable. But his eyes? They burned with something dark. Curious little wife, he murmured, stepping forward. You just can't help yourself, can you? Selena's heart pounded. She had just uncovered something far more dangerous than she ever expected. And now, there was no turning back. Kanga took the file from her hands, flipping through it casually. You want to know about me, he said, his voice low. Then let's make a deal. Selena swallowed. What kind of deal? He stepped closer, pressing her against the desk. Too close. I'll tell you my secrets, he murmured. But every truth comes with a price. Her heart pounded. And what's the price? His smirk was slow, dangerous. You'll find out. Selena knew she should say no. But she was already trapped in his world. And now there was no way out. Selena knew she should walk away. But something about the way Kanga said, every truth comes with a price, made her stay. So she asked the question that had been haunting her. Who hurt you? For a moment, Kanga just stared at her. His expression is unreadable. Then he laughed. Low, cold, hollow. Selena, he murmured, stepping even closer. You really think you want to know? She held his gaze. Yes. Silence. Then he leaned down, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered, "Then let me show you." The next night, he took her somewhere forbidden. A warehouse at the edge of the city. She expected weapons, money, maybe more of his men. But she didn't expect a room filled with chains. And in the middle of it, a man tied to a chair, blood dripping from his temple. Selena froze. "What is this?" Kanga's voice was calm, emotionless. "This," he said, rolling up his sleeves, "is the man who killed my mother." Her breath caught. His mother? The man in the chair lifted his head, smirking despite the bruises. "Your mother was a whore, Kanga." Kanga moved faster than Selena could react. A punch. A sickening crack. Blood splattered onto the floor. Selena gasped, stepping back, but Kanga wasn't done. He grabbed the man by the collar, his voice dropping lower. "Say that again." The man coughed, but didn't speak. Because he saw it too. The look in Kanga's eyes. Pure, merciless vengeance. A glimpse of the monster. Selena couldn't breathe. She had always known Kanga was dangerous. But now, she was seeing the monster behind the mask. She should look away, run. But instead, she stepped forward. "Kanga," she said, her voice softer than she expected. He froze. Just for a second. "Selena," he murmured. His voice was different now, rough, torn. And when he turned to her, she saw something behind his eyes. Not just cruelty. Not just power. Pain. Real, raw, pain. The monster was still a man. Her fingers trembled as she reached up and touched his face. For the first time, Kanga didn't stop her. For the first time, she wasn't sure who was in control anymore. The sun had barely set, but the air around the mansion was still thick with the tension of the earlier attack. Kanga stood by the window, his back to her, as if the world outside could offer him something more than the chaos of his own life. But Selena saw it, the way his shoulders were tight, the way he clenched his jaw every time a noise echoed in the distance. He wasn't as invincible as he wanted everyone to believe. And yet, he was invincible. She had seen him take down men like they were nothing, his cold, brutal nature revealing just how far he would go to protect what was his. But Selena wasn't just something to protect. She was a part of him now. "Kanga," she called softly, approaching him. He didn't turn at first, but his breath caught. For a second, she wondered if he would shut her out like he always did. But instead, he simply closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering whatever pieces of himself he had left to offer. Then he spoke, his voice a whisper in the dim light of the room. "Do you want to know what I'm afraid of?" Her heart skipped a beat. "Tell me." Kanga turned, his gaze locked onto hers. It was dark, dangerous, but there was something else, raw, vulnerable edge she hadn't seen before. "I'm afraid of you." Her breath caught in her throat, not what she had expected. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "I'm afraid of what you'll do to me." Selena stood frozen. Had he just said what she thought he said? Her voice trembled. "Kanga, He raised a hand, silencing her. "I can control everything around, Mammy. Empire, my men, my world. But you? You make me lose control." The words hung between them like a challenge, a dare. And despite the fear that knotted in her stomach, she wanted him to challenge her. "You think I'm scared of you?" she whispered, stepping closer, their bodies almost touching. His eyes darkened. "I think you should be." For a moment, they just stared at each other. The room felt like it was closing in on them. Then she reached out. Not just for his body, but for his soul, the part of him that he never let anyone touch. The part of him that was so broken, it had almost consumed him. Her fingers traced his jawline, tender, careful. And for the first time, he didn't pull away. Kanga inhaled sharply, his eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite place. His hands, once so cold and precise, now trembled ever so slightly as he cupped her face. "Selena." She hugged him. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was raw, reckless. And for a moment, everything stopped. The past, the violence, the danger. Everything blurred into the heat of their body, the intensity of their touch. She felt his hardness's armor slowly cracking with every touch and every breath. Kanga's hands were everywhere, his grip firm but trembling, like he was trying to hold on to something he was afraid to lose. And in that moment, Selena realized she had already lost herself. The next morning, the aftermath was still heavy in the air. Selena's fingers trembled as she traced the faint bruises on her wrist where Kanga had gripped her just a bit too hard in his rage. It was a reminder of the world he lived in, the world that was so far from hers. But when she looked up, she found him standing by the door, watching her. His eyes were unreadable, but there was something different now, as if he too was realizing that they couldn't go back to what they were before. She stood up slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. He was no longer just the man who kidnapped her. He was the man she could never let go of. "Selena," he began, voice rough. She shook her head. "No more words." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't speak. He just stepped forward, reaching for her hand as if it was the only thing that mattered. And at that moment, Selena knew. They were bound by shadow, by darkness, by the rawness of their souls. There was no way out, no escape. They were both trapped. But in each other's arms, it was the only kind of freedom they had left. Weeks later, Selena stood by the window of the mansion once more, but this time, she wasn't afraid. Kanga stood beside her, his arm around her waist, the weight of their world settled between them. "You never asked me how it ended with Raphael," Kanga said, his voice low. She glanced up at him. "I didn't need to know." He smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "He's gone. Forever." But Selena wasn't looking at Raphael. She was looking at the man who held her close. The man who was as dark as the night, yet her only light in a world full of shadows. And though the danger would always be there, they would face it together. Because no matter what, she was his queen. And he was her king. The end.